Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for day 3 of GEW. We're about halfway through. Super excited to start this fireside chat here in a minute. But we have lunch provided by the Riata Center, so if you want to take a few minutes, find yourself some food and sit back down. We'll get started here in a couple seconds. Hey Sarah, yes, far left. So the one that's just pasta, yeah, not, but everything else is. Yeah. All right, everyone, now that you have your delicious food, thank you to the Riata Center. We're gonna go ahead and kick off this fireside chat. Would love to shout out Sarah Teague, who is a partner of ours with the Riata Center. She helped set this all up and is a wonderful partner, always helping us get cool people in the space to talk to y'all. And would love to introduce Allison Watkins-Conti. She is the founder and CEO of Watkins-Conti Products and is here to share her story of entrepreneurship. So I'll pass it over to you, ladies.
I guess it would help that I turn my mic on. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks, Jamie, for the introduction. Like she said, I'm Sarah Teague. I'm the manager for the OSU Riata Center and office out of the space. And I can't even remember what year Global Entrepreneurship Week I'm on, but it's probably one of my favorite times of the year just because every year is so different. And the types of programming that 36 allows us to do is really informative. So thank you all for being here. I am super excited to welcome Allison to Tulsa from Oklahoma City. I guess really Evans. It's always nice when someone comes in from beyond green country. But she has a fantastic story. And we've got some interesting questions. For those that are watching online, if you have questions as well, please write them in the chat and we'll be happy to get to them. But I want to just kick us off with, tell us about Allison and how did you get here today?
So you want me to tell you
About my company?
Okay, so my name is Allison, and in 2014, I had an 11.004 pound baby. And as a result of that pregnancy, carrying her around, I actually started suffering from involuntary urine leakage. Super sexy, I know. And it was just in my early 30s, and it was quite debilitating and super depressing. And I went to the doctor, I'm like, what is going on? I did pelvic floor rehabilitation, still had the problem. And I mean, I stopped going to like book club, I stopped hanging out with my friends, like it was really bad. And so I just really poured over my own issue and tried to figure out what I was going to do about it, and invented a product that now I have patents all over the world for. And we're doing clinical trials right now at Stanford University and Thomas Jefferson University in NYU, and we're trying to get it through the FDA approval process. And so it's been a big, very, very ambitious project, but I have been completely convicted to help all of the other women, because I learned that it actually affects 1 in 3 women at some point in their lives. So massive, massive market. So yeah, that's kind of just in a nutshell. That's,
And we'll do I'm gonna allow you to do a shameless plug too of when can they buy your product, where can they buy your product, all of that stuff will be very important. Let's not forget that. But in hearing your story, when we talked about brainstorming, especially for this event, and talking about what was important for entrepreneurs to know, what was important for women specifically that were in the entrepreneurship space, there were so many great nuggets from that conversation, but something that really, which is why we titled this, like, it's never not scary. There's never a moment when you're just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What was that, oh my gosh, factor for you that really convinced you, put you over the edge, that you were the one to solve this type of problem? Because I think there's a lot of people that have problems, but they're not necessarily the ones to solve them. So what was that conviction for you?
I mean, I just was really being selfish, trying to figure out, I mean, because right now, the only thing that's really available are adult diapers and pads. And then it jumps to surgery. So it's a huge gap in the marketplace. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in my early 30s. Like, really, I can't, I'm not going to wear pads, for the rest of my life. And surgery really wasn't a good option for me. So I don't know. I just tried to figure out, how to solve my own problem. I actually just studied on the Mayo Clinic website for hours and hours in the library, trying to understand the female anatomy and what was happening. And then I just drew a picture of an idea that I had and drove out to Catoosa, Oklahoma, actually, and met with a woman that I was told could draw it in CAD. And then I paid $600 for a prototype, and then I used it myself. And whenever I went to kickboxing, because that's really whenever I would experience it, mostly it was with working out. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not peeing on myself at all. And so that was the conviction, right? It's like, okay. And so, but then I was like, okay, so I'm going to be the urine leakage lady. Like, I'm not a doctor, I mean, I'm going to have to tell my story. I'm going to have to talk to people about my personal issue. And I think that was really the scariest part, was being vulnerable, leading into that vulnerability, and just like being okay with, telling that story. And, but it was really whenever I learned that 1 in 3 women experience the problem that I was like, okay, I have to do this. I mean, there's just no option.
So do you feel like that vulnerability and being able to own your story kind of pushed you through any imposter syndrome, or any time that you were like, I'm just a regular person out here living my life. I'm not a scientist. I, didn't study the female anatomy. Well, do you feel like being able to own that story and tell it well is what got you through those moments?
I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I still have the imposter syndrome, right? I mean, just trying to balance, like, I mean, I'm a single mom. I've got 2 kids. I've got this huge ambitious project that I'm working on. It's like, if you guys could only see me at like 7 in the morning, or 3 in the morning, whenever I'm up, it's not what, I think the majority of people assume your life is really like whenever you're an entrepreneur. I mean, but did I answer your question?
Yeah,
I think I still have imposter syndrome.
Maybe we can give you some tips later. Maybe we need to do some power posing. I don't know. We'll have to probably look up some TED Talks later, but I'll write that down. If anyone else has tips in the audience, please let me know.
I mean, I do yoga. I mean, I have to do yoga. I do it at least once a week. If I have to schedule it in, like a meeting, I do, and I don't necessarily tell anybody what I'm doing. I'm just like, I'm busy, at 9:30 on Tuesday. And I think that meditative part really helps me to just, keep going.
Well, I mean, the fact that you make that a priority just for your mental health is really important. Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. So, talking about, your life as an entrepreneur, obviously you're a mom too. What is something, as you carried this product basically from a sketch to, an actual product that's gonna be sold, what has surprised you the most about your journey and being an entrepreneur?
So many surprises. I mean, along the way. I think, in the very beginning, I felt really, really awkward going and talking to doctors and asking them to sign an NDA. Like, I'm so brilliant, right? Like, that was really weird for me. But I was really surprised that, every time I would talk to a doctor, I would see that light bulb go off, whenever I would show them what I was working on. And so I was surprised about that. And then I was really, really surprised that Stanford University, like the doctor that's doing these clinical trials for me, was even interested, so that was really surprising. I don't know, I have some negative surprises too, like some of the things that men would say. It's a 100% medical grade silicone vaginal insert. So I'm trying to explain the concept of inserting something into your vagina to mention them, I got a lot of very surprising comments that weren't necessarily positive, but that also sort of had my little fire, like, I'm gonna show you. So the patents, getting patents all over the world was kind of a surprise. I didn't, it's like, this is a pretty simple concept. I'm gonna go for it, but I'm actually surprised that it hasn't been done before.
Yeah, so kind of taking a step back, I would say most people at least have an example of something to improve upon, but you designed it from scratch. You had this idea. There wasn't really other examples to pull from. That's pretty incredible to take something, sketch it out, and then actually have a product that doesn't exist. So how hard was it to convince, especially, you've raised money, you've raised capital. How has that journey been for you in terms of convincing these investors that this is the real deal?
Yeah, it's been interesting. So, in the very beginning, it was a bootstrap deal. I put my entire life savings into it, and filed that first patent. And then, I had family that invested. So, they really invested in me. And then my first two investors actually ended up investing, because I probably pitched to, I don't know, over 100 people for sure before getting my first investment. But the people that ended up investing was a guy that I went to high school with, so that very first round, it was really just people that I think trusted me. And it's not like my dream, right, to go be the urban leakage lady. So I think it was sort of obvious that, it was something that was, I guess novel, but I had to get some support from doctors. A lot of people were like, well, talk to any doctors. And again, it was just like so scary for whatever reason to go and talk to doctors that had been to medical school and, urologists and gynecologists, and suggest that I had this idea that nobody else had come up with, So I think at the end of the day, the success with fundraising really has been the people that I've been able to get to support the project just from like an advocacy standpoint, just getting those people to sort of sign off on it and say, yeah, I think she's onto something. So we've raised almost $5 million now. So
that's amazing. That is quite amazing. What would you say, because you just, was your latest one with Cortado? Am I correct? Okay, Cortado, we're giving you a shout out. If anyone's here.
I call Cortado the good guys. Like, they're so wonderful to work
They
with,
are
honestly. And I really think that I feel so lucky to have a VC on board because it really sort of validates, it's like the next level of validation because their diligence process is pretty stringent. I think we uploaded 1,044 documents to close that deal.
So tell us, where are you in terms of like what, where is your product in terms of manufacturing? When will it be available? All of those things.
So, we're working with a contract manufacturer. I ended up hiring a guy that worked for Boston Scientific for the medical grade silicone products that they provide to kind of help me vet a manufacturer. And so we've manufactured product. We have all of the tooling so that we can scale. I've got, there's so many different facets of it. It's really interesting. Whenever I started talking to doctors, I saw that light bulb go up, but I kept hearing, well, you're going to have to get FDA approval, and that is just so hard. And it's very true. It's very hard. But so I just actually went to a public conference at the FDA. I just sort of showed up and I shook every hand in the room and still work with some of those people today that I met about 6 years ago. And but that process has been long. I had to do engineering testing, biocompatibility testing, animal testing, feasibility study at OU. And now we're doing our clinical trials. And then the final portion is labeling comprehension, which interestingly, we have to write our labeling on a 5th grade reading level. And we've had to pay about $30,000 for diagrams for the anatomically illiterate population. And then they actually have to read those back to us and tell us, that they can comprehend them. So timeline is like the $1 million question, right? Because we're so reliant on all of our partners. And I am very hopeful that we will have a product licensed to market in about 9 months. So I'm actually now positioning for that full commercialization. I'm starting to build out the marketing plan and distribution partners and things of that nature. So I think about 9 months to answer your question. Very
That's
long-winded.
exciting. That has to feel so good to have gone through all of that, especially, not just the patents, but the FDA approval and all of that, to finally see this. That's like almost to the finish line.
Oh my gosh, just talking to the doctors, like I'm not allowed to actually see any clinical trial data because you can introduce bias, right? I could go in and I could change the protocol to make it work in order to our benefit. So, we've had to have somebody else managing it, but I check in with the doctors that are actually treating the patients, and it's just so rewarding. In fact, last night I was on call and we were looking over just all of the products, that have come to market for urine leakage, and the endpoint that the FDA requires is actually not a very high bar to set. It's a 50% reduction of leakage and 50% of women. I asked doctors, I said, well, how many women do you think had at least 50% reduction in men? She said 100% of them. And she said, in fact, I think that they experienced a dryness, so no leaking. And it's just super rewarding. I'm just ready to get it in the hands of women because I get contacted all the time. When you think about it, 1 in 3 women cannot do jumping jacks without peeing a little bit, and so I literally probably get at least 1 email a day or more asking me, when I can get them the product, or can I just go ahead and give them one?
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. Do you feel like once you carry this through, do you feel like you want to create more products, or is that kind of a wait and see, or what do you feel like the trajectory of once you create this? I'm assuming there'll be maybe some updated versions down the road, but what do you envision for your company?
So when COVID hit, we had just actually started. Hello? Okay. We had just started our trials, our pivotal study that's ongoing now. No.
Yeah, that's weird.
And of course, they shut it down because we're in New York and like New Yorkers hit so hard. And so I was thinking of how can I pivot? And so I just got a little bit crazy with writing patents while I was stuck at home. And so I tried to think of everything that I could possibly do with a medical grade silicone vaginal insert. And so we wrote patents for a device that collects vaginal discharge that can actually have an indicator strip to tell you if you have bacterial vaginosis or yeast infection or an STI, and you can just do that from the comfort of your home so that you don't have to go get stirrups, you know, and then if you do find that you have a problem that you need to see a doctor, you can at least figure that out at home. And also just administration of medication, patented. I mean, I've gone crazy, like where we can actually do all kinds of different diagnostics. I'm interested to learn about, you know, menopause and see what we can learn just from the vaginal microflora, just through the cycle of a woman's health. So I actually just received my notice of allowance on all of those patents. So they came through, and so we got all those utility patents, 110 claims. So I think the first thing that we're going to do is going to be that at-home diagnostics for just like the yeast infection stuff. And then I have spoken to the company that sells the Monostat brand. And so we're looking at potentially collaborating for a product that's going to just be more, just a cleaner, you know, solution. That's it's the vaginal insert is going to be, you know, well, something that we're working at. It's not complete, I have to be clear. I'm not like Elizabeth Holmes up here telling lies. But the concept is, you know, basically that it's coated in the medication and then it's designed in a way where you won't have all of that excessive discharge with the treatment. It'll be just a lot cleaner and user friendly. So sorry, Ben. That makes you uncomfortable.
Just think, you're gonna walk away from this being so much more educated than when you walked in.
My poor 12-year-old son during COVID. He's learned so much about the fetal anatomy, bless him. He's a brilliant kid though. So
There you go. Maybe he'll go on to, you know, be your,
if he can handle it, you guys
Yeah.
can.
yes, yeah, for sure. I mean, you kind of answered this already, I have a feeling, but in terms of your greatest accomplishment, in terms of, do you feel like it's all the patents that you've gotten recently? What do you, or just the fact that you've been able to take from concept ideation to a real product that with real results? What do you feel like is your greatest accomplishment?
Maintaining my sanity. No, I mean, that's kind of a combination. The patents have been huge for me. Stanford, I was just so excited about. I don't have a college degree, so there's the imposter syndrome, right? That I think is where that originates from. And so talking to, you know, these world-renowned doctors and getting them on board felt like a huge accomplishment for sure.
That's awesome. What, and we talked about this a little bit, again, when we were trying to kind of brainstorm of what we wanted our conversation to look like. What would you tell someone who is scared to just get started? Because I think there's a lot of people that have good ideas and then they freeze in terms of their, you know, I don't have a degree, I'm not a doctor, you know, they have these, again, the imposter syndrome happening. But what would you tell someone to help them get
Just
started?
go for it. Like if you wait until you're ready, you're never going to be ready because you're never ready. And I feel like I would get really, really nervous whenever I would talk to people and I would start giggling. And then that would sort of discredit what I was saying. So I would say, don't do that. Don't apologize for yourself. You know, whenever I started writing all the patents, I went back to my investors and for some reason I was apologizing for it. And then, one of them was like, why are you apologizing? You just increased the value of the company. I was like, I don't know. I guess that's a habit. But, I would say just recognize that, perfection is not reality, right? So if you're waiting for your idea to be perfect or your business plan to be perfect or any of that, you're going to fail because it's never going to be perfect. Just go for it and be flexible. And I think that all of the, success that we've had in terms of just like getting it done, really, it's not me. I mean, it's a group of people behind it, so I think that the greatest piece of advice is if you don't know a certain segment of it, just find somebody that's smarter than you and figure out a way to hire them. And I didn't have any money in the beginning, so I gave away a little bit of restricted stock to get doctors on board and former FDA employees on board and engineers and this great team that we have behind it now. And 6 years later, they've all got a little bit of skin in the game, and so they want to see it through like I do because they've been working. And so that I think has been really, really beneficial for just getting it done.
What advice do you have for maybe some female, particularly female entrepreneurs trying to raise money? Do you have some good advice?
Just don't cower down. Don't, just go for it. You're gonna get, we're used to being treated a little bit differently, just go for it. I don't know. Don't be afraid to stand your ground. There is a group that will remain nameless that made me really terrible offers, and basically sort of gave me a little pat on the head and were like, oh, that's so cute. Who's gonna run your company? And I was just like, I am. You're out. And then they actually ended up coming back to me and asking if they could invest in my company a few years later after we had, sort of validated the concept. And I was able to tell them no, which was like the sweetest moment, right? So, don't listen to that. Just, if you have any concern that the people that you're speaking to disrespect you or don't value you or your concept or anything, walk away. Because the moment that you accept money from them, you guys are like essentially married, right? You're stuck. And there has to be mutual respect there. There's a whole bunch of money out there. And so don't take the first offer that's given to you necessarily, just keep going. I would say the biggest value is not the money, it's that the people respect you. So I don't know, just keep going, don't let it get to you. Don't let negative comments or, with a vaginal insert, you guys can imagine, like, it's uncomfortable for me. The men in the room are definitely uncomfortable. And then a lot of them, the first thing I think of is like sexual product. I've had so many comments about like, why don't you just put a vibrator on the end of it? I'm like, how does that even, we're talking about urine leakage. Are you kidding me? So, you cannot let those comments get you down. You just can't. You've got to just walk away.
I really appreciated the comments about really understanding the value that someone like an investor can offer you, whether that's their mentorship or connection, but really understanding your worth, what your company or your product that you're trying to do, and not feeling the pressure of having to say yes. Because I think a lot of people do feel that pressure that if they say no, they're never going to get that opportunity again. or it's somehow going to, especially in a place like Oklahoma where our world is very small and everyone knows everyone. So that's very brave. I mean, it's brave to say no in a situation where you don't feel valued and it's not about the money. I think that's a huge point that a lot of people need to hear.
And you're always gonna get pushback on your valuation, always, 100% of the time. I mean, unless it's like your mother investing, right? Don't, just, because at the end of the day, all of the investments that I got were the valuation that I set for my company. And I was not afraid to say, you know what, I can appreciate that you believe that you're right, but I don't. And at the end of the day, it is my company, not your company. And, but it is difficult, especially if you do have a little bit of imposter syndrome or these little insecurities. I think we all have them, so it's kind of a test, right? Whenever they try to push back on your valuation to see how strong you are, that's kind of how I look at it. And the first one to pull, I mean, you take it, then it's a done deal. So
I really appreciate that. Because, again, I think more people need to hear that. And it, from the coaching that we've done and the things that we've seen, it is such kind of a fluid process. You're always going to take the feedback. You're going to filter it how you need to. Some is good, some is bad. But you're also going to hear a lot more no's than you are yeses, and that's okay. I mean, that's just, I think, a part of the game. And but you're right. It's about moving forward, keep going, don't stop. Because there is plenty of money out there. It's just finding the right people.
for sure. And I also think that it's really important to have advisors, surround yourself with people that are further ahead of you. And listen, we need cheerleaders, but we really need constructive criticism, and we need for people to tell us the hard things that will help us grow. And, it's not easy, but I have one advisor in particular. Her name is Karen Drexler, and she sits on the Princeton's Board of Engineering. She's got a whole bunch of patents. She's executed the sale of 2 companies, one to Roche and one to Johnson & Johnson. And I just knew that I needed to have her on board. So in the early stages, offered her a little bit of restricted stock to learn from her. And we've had bi-weekly calls ever since. And literally for the first 3 years, I would dread the calls with her because it was like everything, that I was talking about, she would have this, not negative, but just, sort of constructive criticism, or she would tell me about the challenges that I was going to face. It was always just like, womp, womp, at the end of that call. But now, several years later, I actually just told her, I was like, I am so thankful for all of that, and she's so well connected that, it's been 5 years since we engaged, and now she's the one that introduced me to the doctor at Stanford. But she was kind of vetting me also as an entrepreneur and challenging me to see if I could handle it before she would even make that recommendation, and connect me with somebody, because it's her reputation on the line too. So you've got to be patient. Nothing happens just overnight. You've got to sort of maintain your expectations, and learn how to pivot, learn how to sort of grow. You're constantly learning and growing, for sure, I think, as an entrepreneur, no matter what you're doing.
So I'm glad that you brought up mentorship, because that was one of my questions, was if you could be mentored by anyone, who would it be?
The person that approves the product at the FDA. We can have Q-sub meetings, right? And they take 3 months to get any feedback, and then everything that they say is, we recommend, because they can't say, yes, you should do this, no, you should not. It's always just a recommendation. It's so ambiguous. You're just like, oh my gosh, So, but I also really love Sarah Blakely. She is the inventor of Spanx. And, you know, it's not urine leakage, but it's kind of a taboo,
Yeah.
you know, subject matter, but look at how wildly successful she's been. And she's really been able to, I guess her team of people that have been with her all these years, she just gave each of them $10,000 and a trip to anywhere in the world they wanted to go, you know, to reward them for their hard work. And I want to be that, like that someday, you know.
Yeah.
I really admire her. So
That's a good answer.
thank you.
Well, I'm going to open it up. Obviously, I want to open it up to the audience, and then Jamie, you will filter any questions that we have online. Okay, all right, perfect. Okay, yes, you.
I want to ask you about maybe providing more context around when you're approaching doctors or potential investors. And if you had a different approach, if they were men versus women, or, you know, how you kind of overcame the hurdle that men responded to a certain way. I'm assuming that, like, you understand, you're going to the, you know, gynecology department, stuff like, you know, just kind of, but, you know, if you could just add some context around that, maybe that would help.
Yeah, so I mean, with women, you know, it's really easy, right? Because all of us, if we don't experience it, we know somebody who does. Whether it's your grandmother, your cousin, your aunt, your sister, whoever, I'm certain that you probably know somebody who's like sneezed and said, "Oh no, I just tingled my pants," a little bit, right? And so those are easy conversations to have. And I did actually get a doctor to come out to my office, the first person that would listen to me, Robert Hurst. And he came out and I was like, okay, you've got to explain to me how to, like, anatomical literacy, like, what are the words I need to use that are not going to be offensive? Like, you cannot say vagina 10 times in a room full of men and everybody's comfortable. So I took a lesson from him and asked questions, so that I would, you know, figure out the language around what I'm trying to communicate in a way that everybody feels safe. And then with the men, you know, they're like, well, I'm gonna have to call my wife, or I'm gonna have to call my sister. And I'm like, I'll wait. Go ahead and do that, you know. So yeah, just kind of learning how to speak about it. With the doctors, I actually would schedule appointments like a patient. And go in there with a non-disclosure agreement like a psycho. I don't know what they thought about me, but it only took a couple of appointments, and then I was able to get supporters that I could put on the website. And then once it was kind of public, you know, it was sort of the trickle down effect, right? Once one's on board, then people will start listening to you. So just don't stop, you know, just don't stop until somebody listens to you.
Love it. Yes.
Okay, thanks for sharing your story and just all your transparency, vulnerability.
Thank you.
I don't know the med device space very well, but with my understanding, obviously there's a lot of upfront research and investment. And money, like monetary investment, that goes on, obviously it's time involved. So what's your, just more like the economics of your business, your company sharing? When do you think you'll be able to reach profitability, start getting revenue first, and then obviously profitability based on how much you invest?
We've tried to be really, really conservative with our pro forma. It is super uncomfortable assumptions, right? And so we've taken, you know, 1% of 1% of the market and taken the highest, or excuse me, like the lowest volume manufacturing, which is the highest price goods. And I think that we're going to be profitable first quarter of year 2. We're really lucky that, I mean, liquid injection molding is pretty inexpensive. You know, it's going to be an affordable product, and so we've got a subscription model, and it's replaced every 30 days. So, and then we've been able to sort of build on ancillary products along with it. So it's like I said, it's a reusable. So we've got a container that we've manufactured and patented that you can keep it in, and then we've got cleansers and lubricants, and a little cleaning brush and all kinds of things. But in our business model, we actually haven't even really gone there with those ancillary products. They're just kind of a cherry on top of the cake kind of thing. So that's something. Yes. Yeah.
Well,
Oh, yeah, sorry. I just took over there.
So you mentioned Elizabeth Holmes earlier, right? So you said it jokingly, but I'm curious, like with everything that's happened, Theranos, like, again, I don't know the timeline very well and trying to remember your timeline as well, but like how did that impact, if at all, your credibility as a woman in a room of investors, etc.?
Well, the very first time I heard about Elizabeth Holmes, I was in a room full of about 200 investment bankers. And I did a presentation. It was my first time to even present to like a big room full of people, and I literally cried. I was like, I've solved the problem for myself. And like, then I got teary-eyed, and then like the people in the room clapped. It was super awkward. And then a woman came up to me afterwards and she said, you know, I really like what you're doing, but you remind me just of Elizabeth Holmes. And then I started researching. I was like, who is that? What is going on? So, I mean, that's the only time that anybody's ever said anything about it. So, I mean, but we've been so focused on quality and, you know, complying with the FDA and, you know, scientific data. And we have it that we can show in the diligence process. So, I mean, I'm fully transparent with everything. So I think you just have to be honest. I mean, listen, we have our opinions, right? But I've been listening to the podcast of the trial that's going on right now, and she's lying to people. So I think as long as you don't lie, you'll probably be okay.
Yes,
Okay, another question. I promise.
no, it's okay.
Is the tech angle or digital health or health going, or is it more just kind of staying in that device? The reason I'm asking is because, you know, like a lot of digital health.
It's something that I'm really interested in looking into with the diagnostics piece and building out, you know, potentially a software that's going to work with our product. We've patented, like, even if there's a little chip that can help with the diagnostics piece. So it's not anything that we're working on, but we've written it into the specification of our intellectual property portfolio. We did build out some software, we're actually working on building out software now so that we can, of course, gather and aggregate the information for people that are interested in buying our product, and also just some of the usability information out of the clinical trials, so that we can make sure that we're developing something that people really love and get ahead of any issues.
Okay, is that an annually done? They have to type it in, the data that you need?
Yeah, the doctors will take the questionnaires that the women are filling out and put it into the system.
Okay, you, and then I saw you and go back. So you're next.
You said that you first used your life savings and then got friends and family. Like, did you have a point at any point in the journey where you thought, I don't know that I can keep doing this because I'm just out of money and I need to go find a job, a different job, or did you keep working a job at the same time?
Well, I don't want to get too preachy on all of you, but I mean, for me, I have a very, very strong faith, right? And, you know, I just knew. I mean, I tell people I argued with God a little bit, like in the beginning, I'm like, really, I'm the ear linkage lady? Like, that is such a terrible joke to play on me, you know? And I'm like, well, okay, I'll do this, you know, but, you know, it has to work, right? So, I mean, there was a time when I didn't have the money to finish out what we were doing. And I just continued as if I did have the money. And then I went to all of my investors and did a convertible note. So we basically told them, look, we need some more money, like right now. We don't want to raise any more money without raising the valuation. We just have a few more things that we need to prove to do that. If everybody puts in another 25 grand, you know, you can either on the next fundraise, get that back at a 6% interest rate, or it can convert at a discounted price on the next round. And it was, you know, it only took about 20 days to close on that because they wanted to protect their investment at that point. So it was a very high pressure kind of moment and very scary, but no, never did I consider getting a job.
Okay,
With
yes.
supply chain issues front and center, have your decisions about where to produce change. You've got this nice long lead time, so you plan that. So how is that factored into your numbers and your decision making?
Yes, that's a fantastic point. Thank you. And actually, we just in the last year added Jenny Martell to our board of directors, and she is head of global brand protection for Colgate-Palmolive. And so she brought this to my attention. So yeah, we've definitely researched raw materials and where they're coming from and the expiration dates on all of those. And we do have to plan out about 9 to 12 months in advance, which is now. So I've just received the quotes and I'm putting the POs in for full commercialization. I've got to figure out how many products we're gonna buy. Yeah, I mean, you know, like how many we think we're gonna sell. So that's why I'm building out this software to sort of try and get as solid numbers as I possibly can on how many people are gonna, yes. Another question around that?
Well, I'm a ESG advisor, and so I'm interested in how you're making decisions around the people producing it, the products you're sourcing it, how you're paying them, and just the whole factor around, you know, diversity, inclusion, and how you are stepping up to treat people the way you want to.
Well, I mean, it's never been a challenge for me because that's kind of part of my moral compass, right? And so I've always been inclusive, you know, in my core. I mean, it's not like a trend for me, but but in terms of just like our suppliers and everything, you know, we have to comply and we have to have ISO certified facilities. And so I've just basically hired people that are smarter than me, that know more about it than I do, to help me vet our partners. And so, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
You talked about we a lot, but you started with one this year, right? Can you talk a little bit about how you grew to we and what the platform?
Well, in the very beginning, I would say and my dad was like, you have to stop saying that because it sounds so just like arrogant. And I was like, oh, you're right. It's not just me. You know, I mean, but I mean, I've just got a whole team behind it now, that it definitely is not just me.
How did that, what that look like? Who was the first and why?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Hurst was the first doctor that would listen to me, and so gave him a little bit of restricted stock. And then I think it was Ben Brucker at NYU, the doctor over at NYU, and he sort of validated this concept, right? Just with his accolades. I mean, he's an award-winning physician. He's a urogynecologist, which is a person that basically treats urological disorders through the vagina. And then I think Karen Drexler was the next one. So the way that I actually was able to get them on board having no money was the restricted stock agreement. And that is structured in a way that it vests over time. So we have 2-year agreements. And, you know, I've tried to have them vest over just 1 year at a time, but some people wanted, you know, a monthly vesting schedule. And I had to have parameters around what they were basically doing for the company for those shares that they were earning. So we had to clearly define their role and how they were contributing to the company for that. So it's really worked out well. I mean, because now they've got, like I said, skin in the game, and they want their money, right? So they're going to help me see it through. And I mean, I tried to be fairly generous without losing control. You know, I mean, thankfully, we've got $5 million that we've raised so far, and I still have control and an amazing team and people behind it. So, you know, that's another area where it's like just
know what it's worth and don't, because I mean, I had a guy, one guy from that investment banking conference where I was like crying. He was like, come out to my country club in Connecticut. I'm off with and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I told my brother, I was like, this guy, he's telling me he can introduce me to all these people and he can give me all this money and all this stuff. My brother was like, I'm going with you. And so he came with me and we went out there and he was trying to close the deal. He was like, you're going to need to give me 5% of your company and I'll make all these introductions. And I was like, isn't that cool? You know, to my brother, I was like, he really loves the deal. And my brother was like, run. You know, so you've got to have people that you trust that, you know, can see your weaknesses and tell you whenever you're, you know, kind of getting caught up in all the emotional side of things. Because it's definitely, you know, when it's your baby and somebody wants you, you know, it's tempting, especially when they're making all these promises. So my advice would be, if you're going to give out any stock at all, 5% is way too much for advice. And have perimeters around what exactly these people are delivering on, and have it, you know, have them earn it over time, instead of just giving it all at once. That's how we structured it.
We have a few more minutes. Any last questions? Jamie, do we have anything online? Okay, all right. Yes.
Did you know a lot about business when you first started, or did you kind of learn a lot along the way? How do you like know what you don't know? You know?
I love that question.
That's
That's a great question.
Well, I have been fortunate. My grandfather was an entrepreneur, so even just like as a child, I sort of learned a little bit about business at like the Christmas dinner table without even wanting to necessarily. I would just hear kind of their struggles and where they were successful. My dad's an entrepreneur, so I saw successful businesses and I saw businesses fail. So I don't know how, you know, other than that, just hiring people, right? I mean, just getting people to support the project that know more. Like, I'm not a lawyer, so I just raise the money to hire the best lawyers that I could possibly find. And I'm not a doctor, so I just try to get a doctor that knows more than me. I mean, you know, that just knows all about it. And so really, I think it's just surrounding yourself with all, you know, people that can contribute to each little facet of your business. And there's so many different areas of expertise needed. So it's just other people's knowledge, really, and advice, and be willing to take it even whenever you don't want to hear it. My regulatory team tells me no always. I joke with them, I'm like, I'm gonna try to do something, I'm sure you're gonna tell me no. So many parameters, and you just have to kind of listen to them and be in a lot of ways, be a follower to be a leader, right? And recognize that people know more than you and you can't possibly know it all. I think that's really what makes a successful entrepreneur is, and one other thing that I would recommend to everybody, I finally hired an assistant and it was the best decision of my life, probably. I've just been so much more efficient with everything, just even having him help me with scheduling and stuff like that. Huge asset.
Yes.
A woman in the food co. Can you tell who that lady is?
Her name is Terry. I can get you her contact information. And if at the end of this, if you'll send me your email, I can forward you her contact information.
Well, we are out of time. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Allison, this was so great. I wish we still could just sit here for hours and ask you all of the questions. I know that I learned so much. I hope you guys did too. Those online, thanks for joining. And please stick around if you have any questions. And there are, Jamie, is there other events today and throughout the rest of the week for GEW? So thank you all.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry. Of all of the commercial patents held,
only 5.5% of them are held by women. So if you have any ideas, you're a woman or a man, I mean, I'll help you too if you're a man. But I would be more than happy to help you kind of get started on the patent process, because it's actually only $65 to file your first provisional patent, which gives you a full year to completely develop your concept and then translate it into a complete patent and raise the money for the rest of it. So really want to help lift other women up. And I don't know why that's such a low number, but I think it needs to change for sure. Thank you guys
Absolutely.
for listening to me.